Amazon, I'm Jasmine Moyer, and welcome to Sway TV.
I'm so excited to get started today.
We're gonna have some fun on the street.
And we're doing Workout Wednesdays here on Amazon Live.
And she is fresh off the set of Shark Tank.
It's such an honor to be here today, so thank you.
We are going to be talking all about parenting.
This is our tribe of women. What is the key to a successful business?
And it's Brad Grunberg. Hi, Brad.
This is a game changer.
Thank God you are on this show. There's a Tesla. You can actually buy a car on Amazon.
That is so crazy.
The perfect gift. Yes, we got our Drake's Cake break. So awesome.
Shake, shake, shake. Shake your Zulai.
This is fun.
Here we go. I'm so excited. I can't even stand it. That was very dramatic.
Oh, Naveen says this is better than Netflix. So happy New Year 2021. Let's bring it in with a bang.
2, 1.
So grateful for you guys and for Sway TV.
I've had such a great time with all of you.
We'll see you soon. Until then, let's sway.
Let's sway. Let's sway. Let's sway. Let's sway. Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Hello and welcome back to Sway TV on Amazon Live. I am Marissa Gold. It is Wednesday, February 3rd. I cannot believe we are already in the second month of 2021, but yay, 2021. We are here, we are doing it, we are in it, we are being present, and we are here on the Art of Parenting. Today we are talking again all about dads. How do dads take part in family life? How do they take part in their children's lives? What is the role that the dad can play? How can the dad help the other spouse, their spouse, the parent? And what can they do where they can really just own it and take it on and really be an integral part of their kids' lives? I so wholeheartedly believe in the dad experience and bringing dad into the conversation. I think that dads have such an excellent view and a really different view than moms and where moms come from when they're parenting. And, you know, I have parents say to me all the time, well, is it okay if we do things differently? Is it okay if we disagree? Yes, it is. It teaches kids all about flexibility, although I do think you should agree on the big things, and I think you should agree in front of the kids for the most part, but that's a separate conversation. And so I'm really excited because we have a really amazing guest and author today, and I'm going to bring him on in just a moment. But it has been a week starting February. I have just been crazy busy. And so coming into the studio today, I need to just center myself and take a deep breath and be mindful. And I thought the best way that I could do that is to share some of my favorite products with you that really just help center me, mainly because they are relaxing and because they smell really good. And let's face it, when we elevate our senses, it brings us to a different place. It brings us to the present. It keeps us mindful. And it's something I've talked a lot about it on this show, that I believe in elevating our senses in different ways. And so I'm going to share with you two things. And I've been waiting to do this. I was going to put it on before I got here today. And I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to do this on the show. I'm going to do it live. So this is one of my favorite body creams. It's by Way. And it is a super hydrating whipped body cream, yada, yada, yada. The best thing is how good it smells. It is super lightweight. I'm just going to take a little bit goes a long way, and I'm going to rub it into my hands, because also, let's face it, if you are like me, you are using all types. You're washing your hands 50 times a day. You're putting the hand sanitizer on. Your skin is really dry, in addition to it being the winter and your skin already being dry, but it's even more dry, right? And so it is all about doing things to keep us healthy, right? That means to be hydrating on the inside, drinking water and other things, and as well as doing things for our skin on the outside and keeping our body healthy. Okay, so I shared with you that. And then the other thing that I'm going to share with you, which also is one one of my other favorite products, when I've talked about it on here so frequently, and that's because, again, it also elevates the senses, and specifically the sense of smell. And it's very hydrating to the skin. I know not many of you are traveling right now, but this is great to take on planes if you are. This is for men and women, boys and girls can use this. This is Mario Badescu, and I absolutely love it. Check this out. It is Do It for the Glow. Okay, so I am using the aloe cucumber and green tea. I go fluctuate between this and the rose water one. And I'm just gonna spray a little bit on, and it doesn't taste so good, but it feels really good on my face and it's hydrating. So with that, I'm gonna take a deep breath. I have lotion on my hands. I've elevated my sense of smell. I'm gonna take a deep breath. We're gonna calm down. We're gonna have a really great show. If you're just joining me, thank you so much for being here with me today, Wednesday, February 3rd, on The Art of Parenting on Sway TV on Amazon Live. I wanna welcome to the show Chris Pegula. Chris is a dad, first and foremost. Hi, Chris. He is also the author of 2 books. This is one of them, which he's going to talk about momentarily. It is called Diaper Dude, The Ultimate Dad's Guide to Surviving the First 2 Years. I love that. I love it especially because there are not that many books that are geared towards dads. So what made you want to do, actually, you know what, we're going to go to the book in a second, but one of the things that for my viewers that have watched, one of the things that they know that I like to do is to set the intention for each show that I do. So my intention for this show with you, I'm so happy that you're here and you're joining me. Thank you for taking time out of your busy, busy schedule to be here. And as we sit in quarantine, right? My intention for having you on is to really open up and expand this conversation to dads, and to have dads really feel that they are an integral part of the conversation and they're not on the outside of the conversation just as a helper or just as the dad who sees their kids maybe a couple of hours a day. So thank you so much for being here to have this conversation with me. And I'd like to ask you, what is your intention for being here with me? And then we'll jump into all of the meaty questions about you being a dad and the books.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for having me, Marissa. This is a pleasure. My intention actually is to get dads to feel connected, because that is one thing I think in the experience of being a dad myself, of 3 children, the oldest being 21 years old. In the beginning, it was really difficult to feel like there was a connection when my wife was pregnant, because everything was happening to her and I was left on the wayside observing. So that really was the inspiration behind everything I've done. But it's my intention today to really hopefully grab those men and dads that are watching and give them tips to feel like they're connecting and grounded. And much like you said, with the smells and the creams and all, just to like really feel the moment. And by the way, my wife has the Mario Badescu in rose water, so it's fabulous.
This one.
Yeah.
This one. I go between the two. I love them. Well, this is your first time being on the show, but what I always say to my viewers is that it's very important to me that I only talk to them and share with them products that I genuinely, truly believe in. And every once in a while, it's something that I don't actually use, but someone that I know. But I love it when people are like, oh, I use that too. So it is. It's a great, they have a great product line. And my girls use some of the products and I use other products, but this I use all the time. So, okay, well, one of the things that I love so much that you said is that you want to share your own tips and tricks. And the reason why I love that is because that's what this show is all about. It's really about expanding a wealth of knowledge to all parents. And, you know, younger, older, different nationalities, races, genders, everything, you know, different socioeconomic backgrounds, for everyone to feel empowered by knowledge and education, so that then we can, as a community of parents, make the best decisions for our children and have those decisions be based on education, right? As opposed to fake news. So right? I won't even go there. So what would you say? We're going to start out really big, and then we'll drill down. If you were sitting on the couch, and I wasn't here, but you were sitting here, and you were sitting next to someone who was about to become a dad, and like you, was in that position where he was watching his significant other, his wife, pregnant, and experiencing all of those feelings that go along with being pregnant. And I know, because I was the one that was pregnant, I felt immediately bonded to my kids. I really did. I mean, from the second I heard their heartbeat, for me, I knew what was happening in utero developmentally. It was a happy, lovely time in my life. And I know that even when I got bigger, it was not really a time that my husband at the time could participate in, other than just try to make me comfortable, which he did. He did a good job of that, but he wasn't able to be there in the same way and bond with the baby in the same way that I was already doing. So what would you say to a dad who's saying, you know what, I'm feeling really disconnected and I'm not sure what to do?
I think the first thing is to really open the dialogue with your partner. And the honesty of that feeling is really helpful, because that was one of the ways I got closer to the experience, was my wife saying, between all of her education and the reading that she's done, I think all women have read What to Expect When You're Expecting,
yeah.
the Bible. So there's so much there that they, can relate to. And it put me at ease when she would educate me. And that became a ritual for us at night, the end of the day. Before falling asleep, we talked about, so what happened today? What was this experience? And her education really grounded me and really gave me the inspiration to want to learn more. And that's what gave me the drive to look for a product or books out there that would respond to what I needed. And there wasn't anything really on the market.
Yeah, I so love that. So I was going to ask you, did you find anything? Was there anything when you went out and you were looking that was for you? Or was that specifically the impetus for the beginning of you writing?
There wasn't anything available. Like, the internet was so new.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there was nothing. In fact, the inspiration really started when my wife came home one day with literally a dozen diaper bags, and they were so feminine and so flowery. And I took one look at them and I'm like, which one is mine? She said, take your pick. And I'm like, I can't wear leopard print. I'm not wearing flowers. So that started the impetus to create a product for dads, which was the Diaper Dude brand of diaper bag.
Right. And I have to just say, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second, because I just want to introduce to our viewers that I just want to say that you really disrupted the diaper bag market. You created a product that you changed a product that had not been changed basically since its inception, right? And so as a result, you really changed the trajectory, I think, in many ways, of the baby industry, because I think that you were one of the first people to really look at the industry and say, you know what, things don't have to be flowery and covered in teddy bears and ducks and et cetera.
Correct. And it's interesting because the category became diaper bags for dads, and it didn't exist before. Right. So it was really exciting that we were the leaders of that. And it's funny because the first trade show I attended in New York City, I could remember it clearly. I had a little booth, which was like 5 by 10.
Were you at Toy Show? Is that the one that you went to?
Oh, no, actually the New York Gift Show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so it's funny because everybody would pass by saying, who's Diaper Dude? Look at Diaper Dude. Oh my God, Diaper Dude. And they were like making fun of me. And in fact, I would have mom and pop shops come by, and they would actually question me, saying like, who's going to use a diaper bag for dads? My kid would never do that. And I'm like, really? Why wouldn't you want your son involved? And it was a real education, both for myself and learning how difficult it may be to launch the product, and also learn from the store owners and educate them that this is about being ahead of the curve. So you've got to jump on and really inspire and make a change. So that's,
And did you feel that they were receptive to the change, or did you feel that it was I'm just curious, because we talk also, to entrepreneurs and other industry disruptors. So I'm curious, just from a business perspective, as an entrepreneur, did it feel like you were received well by the baby industry, or did you feel that it was an uphill battle?
It was actually, it ended up being received really well. It took a bit, but I think what really launched us was being on Oprah. Yeah, we
Oprah
did.
tends to launch people.
It was the world's biggest baby shower she held, and we
Oh,
had,
I remember that.
yeah, 700 moms and dads that
I
needed.
remember that show.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So that really put us on the map, and we ended up going global not soon after. But when we went from boutique shops to mass market like Nordstrom, and then eventually Toys R Us and Bye Bye Baby,
Right.
and Walmart, the whole.
All over, the whole shebang. That's amazing. It's amazing that you went big box as well as small boutique. That usually doesn't happen at the same time.
Right, and it was actually interesting because our price point in the beginning was really good. It was like $49, so that's almost a mass market price to begin with.
Oh, beyond. I mean, I feel like a lot of the other diaper bags were like upwards of 100 plus.
Absolutely, up to like 400 or 500.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and in fact, Barney's at one point asked me to make a diaper bag leather for them, no matter how much it cost, and I'm like,
no.
Yeah, so it was pretty crazy.
Did you do it?
I I did, but my sample, and it was so it would have cost over $1,000, which they were fine with. But the quality was like really heavy. It was a heavy leather, so it took a while for me to figure it out. So
Right.
it didn't, because then Barney's ended up not.
Don't you sometimes think like how interesting it is when you're ahead of the curve? Like you were really ahead of the curve, right? This was like 20 something years ago, right? Like 15 to 20 years ago. And now I feel like if you were like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a leather diaper bag for dads, I feel like with all of the celebrity influencers, they'd be all over that, right?
Completely over it. In fact, we were ahead of the curve as well because we started using recyclable products made out of water bottles. So the line had recycled fabric, which was really cool.
That is really cool. I didn't know that. So I was telling Chris that we actually had one of his bags, which is so cool. I didn't even realize it at the time because I'm not really into labels. I don't really pay attention to when I purchase something, I'm not purchasing it because it is a specific designer label or, even a non-designer, but just a label. So I didn't even remember, but when I was researching for the show and I went to look at Chris's diaper bags, I was like, oh my God, this looks familiar. We had one of these, which is so funny. So I was an early adopter. I was ahead of the curve also. I was right there with you.
Well, and you know what, Marissa, it's interesting because I think that most of our customers were moms because they were buying for the dads.
Yep.
Because the producer at the time was moms doing all of the purchasing.
Right.
And not until online and Amazon. I mean, Amazon was one of our big accounts as well. And we were doing amazing with that. And even did a line of bags with Major League Baseball. And
really?
Yeah, we had all the teams from Dodgers, Yankees.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, I know that I definitely, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure that I bought it for the first Father's Day. And that was the gift that I get. It was like that with probably a massage or something. I mean, it was a long time ago now. We're talking like 15 plus years.
That became the holiday too. That was like our Christmas, Father's Day.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Yeah, I'm sure. Because, to your point that often the bags were purchased by the mom and then given to their husband, which is exactly, it's like my husband wasn't walking into baby stores and looking for things that were like for dads. The other thing too is like back then, like there weren't things that were for dads. Whereas now you walk into Target and they do have things where they may not be marketed to dads, but they certainly are much more, fitted. Exactly. They're dad friendly. Yes. And I actually wanted to share two of those right now that I think are pretty dad friendly. So this is actually by the company Skip Hop, and Skip Hop is one of my favorite baby diaper bag brands because of the quality and the price point of their bags. And this, if a dad didn't want to actually carry a full diaper bag around, this is a really great alternative. It's the Pronto changing pad, and it has everything you need to change your baby, but really nothing else. Okay, so I love that it clips on to a stroller, or it could clip onto a shopping cart, or it could clip onto lots of different things. I love that it wipes clean so easily. It has that like plasticky surface, and so it wipes clean really easily. But here's what I don't like. I want to see a dad in the commercial, right? Like like these companies need to like think about that and put dads in these commercials, especially for products that speak to dads, right?
Absolutely. Yes, completely.
Like, I feel like that would be such a game changer for so many of these companies if they were actually thinking like, where is the other share of the market that we can tap into? That's just my own marketing 2 cents, which, you know, they're not going to listen to me, but that's what I would do. And then if a dad did want a larger diaper bag, unfortunately, yours is not on sale right now on Amazon, which I'm so bummed about because I really do love yours. And I'm not just saying that because you're here, but in my opinion, it's one of the most, if not the most masculine friendly. It doesn't feel like a diaper bag. It just feels kind of like a messenger bag, which I think is so great. But since I can't actually show that because it's not on Amazon at the moment, I want to show this one, which definitely it's a black backpack style. And this one is also by Skip Hop. And it has, one of the things that I really like about this is that it is waterproof. I love it. The ultimate convenience on the go. So that's the Skip Hop one. And while it is not as masculine as what yours was, the Diaper Dude bag, this one, at least it's a backpack style. It does, and it's not floral. It's, you know, very straightforward. And I do think, I mean, man or woman, I think backpacks are so much easier. Backpacks and messenger bags are the way to go when you also have to hold your baby. When you have a bag that is just like on one shoulder and you're trying to balance your baby, and it's just, forget it. It's just not a pretty scene. So, okay, so Chris, let's jump forward. You did the diaper bags, and then you started to think about a book. So take me through like what happened that got you into that world of wanting to write, becoming an author, and then the 2 different books.
Sure. Well, when I was involved in the company over probably 3 years in, a lot of the research I would do when customers would call and order a product, I would ask them how they heard about our product. And they would tell me stories. Like one dad told me how he went to a football game and he saw another dad carrying my bag with his kid, and he yelled out to him, "Hey, where'd you get that bag?" And he's like, "diaperdude.com." And it was like pretty crazy.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I said, that's really crazy and exciting. I'm like, what other products were you finding or looking for? And, you know, they would say, there's absolutely nothing there. In fact, they would lead with, I wish there was a guide to help me. So that started my process of wanting to go ahead and put together something for them. And it evolved into the book. My first book, which was From Dude to Dad, the Diaper Dude Guide to Pregnancy. And essentially it's a guide for dads to help them going through the pregnancy process and to be the best partner they can be.
And what would you say are like the top 3 takeaways or top 5 takeaways from that book? From that book, the main takeaway is that you don't have to lose your identity when you become a dad. You can still maintain the personality you have. You don't have to be the stereotypical 50s father. You know, you go to work and your job is not involved parenting, and you know, you can stay connected, you can be involved. So that was really a part of it. Also, that you are, you know, the takeaway is to the connection that you have with your partner deepens through parenting. And so it's really important to work on your relationship before the child comes, because once 3 enter the process, you know, you deal with emotions like jealousy even over the child because you're not getting the attention.
So these are things you have to prepare for. And finally, I think the overall last one is that it's okay to make mistakes. We all make mistakes and we learn from our mistakes. So just to be okay and accept the dad you are and just do your best at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love those messages. I especially love to be involved and to know that it's okay to make mistakes and that we learn from our mistakes, because I think as adults, we're often, we're scared to make mistakes and even more scared to admit it when we do. And yet that's one of the biggest gifts that we can give our children, is to admit to them when we're wrong and to figure out how to move forward and to model that, right? To create human beings that can then also do that. So, so tell me about, you have 3 kids. Tell me about them.
Okay. Love my kids.
I know. It's so fun to talk about our kids, right?
and the kids were the inspiration for
Totally.
my business. So my oldest is named Kai, and he is 21 years old. And he's a sophomore at the University of Arizona, but he's living home because of quarantine.
Yes.
And my daughter is 19, Juliet, and she is in Nashville, going to Belmont University, and she's doing songwriting. She's a songwriter and singer.
Wow.
So
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And my youngest is 16, Cole, who's a boy, and he's here in Santa Monica at school. Amazing. He's an amazing electrician, I should say, because he builds his own computers. He's a movie maker. He's an Instagrammer. He's like the whole gamut of electric.
Did he get that from you, or is that just something that he picked up along the way?
I wish. I would say my grandfather used to take like radios and electronics apart and never put them together.
Yeah.
And then my brother, oldest brother, I'm one of 6 kids. So my oldest brother did the same exact thing, and we were always bummed because we could never use the latest in electronics because he would take them apart.
That's
So
awesome.
I think my side of the family is more dedicated.
Interesting. So maybe Cole will be an engineer. Maybe he'll go and change the world in that way.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And so do you feel like you were engaged with them right from the get-go? Or do you feel like it took you a while to get into being the dad that you evolved to be?
I would say from the get-go, because it was both my wife and I. My wife was like insistent that she needed my help, and she also has an autoimmune disease, lupus.
Okay.
So I had to be involved from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because once I started my business, I ended up working out of my garage. But when my kids were older, even like 2 years old or 3 years old, I would literally have to leave the house and drive around to our alley and like go into my office from the back so they wouldn't know I was home working, because otherwise all bets were off.
That's amazing, because they would want you. They would want, because you were involved, and it was like it was hard for a young child to differentiate between daddy's at work versus daddy is present and doing the daddy thing. It's interesting though, because think about all the kids today that with quarantine have their parents at home, and that it's been like this massive adjustment. Right. Probably part of why why I'm so busy right now consulting, because I've got so many parents who are like, help me trying to figure this out. Like it's been very challenging, to say the very least. So we're fortunate that our kids are older.
Very much so, very much so. But what's interesting too is before I started Diaper Dude, I had a dog walking business in Santa Monica.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I would take my oldest with me in a baby carrier on my shoulders, and I would have 10 dogs and just go around the neighborhood, and he would help me out, and it was amazing.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so I was always involved to that degree with them.
Okay. So would you say that there were areas that you specifically that you like owned, or would you say you were just involved in every part of their like upbringing? Because I know some dads take on, like they do bath time, or they do, when my ex was on here last week, he was talking about how he really did breakfast on the weekends and, often did the morning routine because A, I'm not a morning person, and B, it just was an area that he could really jump in, own, and spend time alone with the girls. And so I guess I'm wondering, like, were there certain things that you actually owned and that you did alone with your kids, or was it always just really that you were doing stuff together as a family?
Definitely, I owned many areas, like when the babies were very young, the nighttime, feeding if my wife was sleeping and changing and putting back to sleep.
Yeah.
And then daytime, getting them to sleep, good old San Vicente Drive,
Oh, love it. Yeah. That is like God's gift to new parents in the LA area, right? It's like if you have a baby, it's either PCH or San Vicente. It's just like, thank you so much.
Hilarious. And of course, bath time was one of my favorites, between like having the bath time with the kids, with the products that you can put in the tub with them and have them float on you,
Yeah.
Was really special. So I would say those were the few that I definitely own.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, I mean, I love that you did both. And then, so what was the transition to the second book, to this one?
So that was a follow-up to be able to guide fathers from the point of birth and then through the first 2 years.
Okay.
And giving them the heads up of what to expect and to, how to, again, continue that emotional. I think both of my books are very emotionally based in a sense, so that men prepare themselves in that way.
Yeah.
Instead of just being expected to like show up and deal. So there's a lot of that Zen world that you need to prepare for, and that's kind of like the basis from where I write from.
It's so interesting. I mean, you seem very emotionally evolved, which I will say, and I don't like to make generalizations. However, it has been my experience that tends to not be the case for a lot of dads, a lot of men, and quite frankly, a lot of women too, right? Like to be an emotionally evolved person and to be aware of your own emotions and then how to handle the emotions of the people around you. It seems that you are an emotionally evolved person or human being. And I'm curious, what did you do that got you to this place? Like, was this part of your training pre-dad? Is this things that you've read in the 20 years since becoming a dad? Like, how did this evolve?
That definitely took part with my wife, because when we met, I think we originally, after like one date, we went into couples therapy just to see if like it was going to last. And
after one date?
Well,
that's a commitment.
It is. I mean, we were living in New York at the time because we were college sweethearts, and
oh, that's sweet.
And coming from a family of 6 children, I was the fifth, and I had no voice because I was the fifth
You were
one.
The fifth, right? Of course.
So going to a therapy session for me was like amazing. I was like, someone who listens to you,
Yeah.
and takes information. So that began my journey, and from that point on, I've been a huge therapy fan. So I have over 30 years plus of therapy under my belt. My wife was a marriage family counselor.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense now. It's all coming full circle. I'm a very big believer in therapy as well, clearly. And I also think that, human beings, especially adult human beings, once we're like in our 20s, the brain wiring is essentially kind of done by the time we're 25-ish. And it's always really changing a little bit, but it's essentially set around 25. But the way that it changes, and you may know this, is that when we are in the presence of emotionally evolved people and we can have reflective and conscious, mindful conversations where we're able to take the information in and really reflect on it, that's how we change. And that only really happens when you're having conversations with people that are like-minded but emotionally evolved. So therapists or other adults, and like I said before, I was joking, but the reality is that there are a lot of human beings that are walking around on this earth that are not that emotionally evolved. And they launch, as I'm sure you are aware, they launch into adult tantrums quite frequently. So we have seen that. We have seen some of that.
Too much, unfortunately.
Yeah, too much, unfortunately, yes. So yeah, I think that it's interesting what you're saying, because what you're really talking about also is doing the self-work, right? And never saying to yourself, I'm done and I'm perfect. And knowing that you can constantly be evolving. And what I love about that from a parenting perspective, I love so much that you are modeling that to your children, and so that they can see, oh, I'm never done, right? I can always make myself better and be a better person. Is that something that you intentionally are trying to teach your kids, or just hoping that they absorb from you?
I think it's now intentionally as I think about it, but it's the hope that they absorb it. I think curiosity is so important, as a parent to constantly question and constantly attempt to lead through action and modeling through example.
Yes.
So that's really where even my books I feel have resulted from all of my mistakes and all of my errors. That's really how I feel like I'm worthy of being called an author, because my parenting has not been perfect by any means. So the mistakes are what I've been able to build myself on and make myself, be a better person.
Right. Well, I think it's the mistakes, if we truly can learn from them, if we allow ourselves to really accept and learn from them, then we evolve, right? So, but that's a hard thing. I mean, I think it's like we were saying before earlier in the show, that's a very hard thing to be able to admit that we were wrong and then to reflect and learn and move forward. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this book. So this book is really about the first 2 years of your child's life. So does this book, it feels like your first book is more about becoming emotionally prepared and how to get into the process and be there with your significant other, whereas this one feels a little bit more like practical guide to the first 2 years. Would you say that that is a correct description, or am I missing components?
No, you're spot on. Definitely, it's, the second book is being able to have the courage to go out and to do those things with the knowledge that the book gives you so you can be independent as the parent. And, I remember when my firstborn was old enough to go in the baby carrier out for a walk with me. I think he was maybe 8 months old at that time when I was brave enough to do it. I took my friend with me, and he was crying incessantly, and I couldn't figure out why. And so at one point, I took him out of the carrier and realized I put his jeans on, the same pants, the same leg in the same pants. And so, like, 2 legs in the same pant. And
right.
That's how I figured out how he was crying. And I solved the problem, put him back, and my friend was like, wow. Because babies cry for, like, few reasons. Hungry, they're hungry, the diaper needs to be changed, or they're uncomfortable. So those are like 3 things that, you go through your checklist, figure it out, and then it's solved.
Right.
So,
and it's very empowering when you're able to figure it out on your own and to know, hey, I got this and I can be the parent. The other thing that I think that new parents and first-time parents forget with their first child kind of all the way through really is that kids are really resilient, and we will make mistakes, and there will be things where they're going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. And when we figure those things out, then we build our own confidence around becoming a parent. And I think there's this massive learning curve around becoming a parent, right? And there isn't really like this all-encompassing course that we can all take. It really is up to what was modeled to us, who are our friends around us that have kids, and then the sources that we look to for information, like your books. Yeah. So I'm curious, have dads reached out to you in response to these 2 books? What type of response have you gotten?
Absolutely. I love getting, I'll get Instagram posts from dads being caught reading the book in preparation from their spouses, sending it and tagging me. And it's just so great. And actually what's interesting is the first book evolved now into a podcast. And it's called FromDudeToDadShow.com. And I get people all the time asking, can you touch this topic for me? These are my issues. And so can you address that? And it's amazing. I'm like so honored and thrilled that they are responding in such a positive way. And moms as well.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's talk about the podcast. I'm fascinated by podcasts. So, how long ago did you start? Tell me everything. I want all the details.
Yeah, so it really started during COVID. So back in March.
So it's pretty new.
Very new, yes.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I teamed up with my host who lives in Arizona after I was on his show a few years ago because he had a business podcast and he brought me on for Diaper Dude.
Okay.
And he had such a great voice and he had such a great podcast that, we eventually teamed up together to do my podcast, From Dude to Dad Show. And he's the same age as me, 49, and has 2 girls who are ages 4 and 6. So it was great because he's parenting from that age frame, and with me giving him guidance, and we compare our experiences together.
Yeah, what is that like? I mean, that's really amazing that you guys are essentially, you're the same age, yet you have kids that are at very different developmental stages. So what is that like?
It's really amazing for him to learn from me and me from him, because I'm like, God, I wish I didn't do what I did, back then, because now I'm, dealing with it. So
Right.
we really have the opportunity to teach each other the lessons of parenting, and it's just inspirational. It really is.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love actually when you have people in one space that have children at different ages, because I think the conversation that can happen is really fascinating. But the other thing that's so interesting to me is, the way that I parented when I became a parent 15 plus years ago is very different than how I think I would potentially parent now if I was becoming, just by sheer force of technology and how, the internet and the baby industry and so many things that have just exploded and come onto the scene, that when you and I became parents, they were not there. We didn't have these things. The internet was there, yes, but it was like chat rooms, which, that was essentially it. It was very different. Right? And there were, yes, there were books. It was like what to do when you're expecting, and like maybe 2 or 3 others. Whereas now you go, and it's completely overwhelming, and it's hard to figure out like what's really good and what's not. So what would you say sets your book apart and or your podcast apart from other things that are geared towards dads today?
I would say the podcast is basically different because it really is, it's not interviewing anyone. It's us saying, okay, guys, here's where you're at. This is what you need to do. This is what I did. It didn't work out. So this is what's better. And the same with Brian, who's the co-host.
Yeah.
So, and our podcast is only 15 minutes because we want to go in and out. We don't want to be long and boring and tiresome and yada, yada. So I think that that's like a huge thing. That's a draw for a lot of our listeners. In terms of the book, I think that the vernacular it's written is just relatable for men and humorous. And it's written in the way that it's like everything that women would want their husband to know, but not to tell them because it's written this way. So here they will now get the inside secret from another dad and impress their wife because she's going to be thrilled to know that they're fair enough.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think there's a really good voice in the book that is really, it's like exactly the right voice that a dad will listen to and a mom will appreciate that that's the voice, right? Because it is, I do definitely think that there is a difference for a book that is geared towards a mom to be or a new mom versus a dad to be or a new dad. You can't, just like a parenting book that's geared for parents of teenagers versus parents of new kids. It's very different. The experience is very different. And to lump people into the same, you lose everybody, in my opinion. So I love that there's this area on the market that's really geared towards dads. Do you think it has changed the way dads parent?
Yes, 100%. I mean, I credit women and moms for that transition. Obviously, from them. Women going back to work and being the strong workforce. And a lot of men, after 2008 that lost their job, decided to stay at home and take over. And it was very brave and daring and frightening for a lot of men, but it was the right choice. And I think that movement has just inspired to change the stereotype of what it means to be a dad today. And, the workforce is, well, especially now with COVID, the next challenge becomes how do you manage work and parenting. But it's really a wonderful process that men were able to just have to fall into not out of choice, but out of
necessity.
Need. Yeah. So, and that's what really I think is like sometimes we have to be forced into this role. And now it's become so natural that look at paternity leave is becoming so much more normal.
I know. I love that. I'm hoping that it becomes like a national agenda. I think that dads deserve to have that time protected with their new children.
100%.
So what do you think are the challenges Or do you feel that there are different challenges that face dads than moms?
Yes, I definitely do. I think a lot of it could be inward from men having to deal with what we just discussed, the stereotype and fighting those stereotypes.
Yeah.
Also, not being assumed to be the manny, which I felt many times I was accused of. I think it's also just feeling, I think confidence is something that is something that you either have or you earn it and you grow it. And I think that that's something that is really important for men to have. And I think that it's becoming much more common and easier to attain because of all the products that are out on the market and because of, things geared towards men. Even if you see TV shows today and advertisements that are starting to lean more that way, it's just fitting the mold and making it just translate easier and more naturally.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's right. I think that fighting stereotypes, gender stereotypes, and I think even just the internal feelings of like, yes, this is comfortable to me, but I'm going to get judged, which ironically, so many moms feel that same thing, right? And there's like this whole mom shaming movement, and moms all the time feel that they're being judged, even by their friends, but especially by the non-friends and the academic community that they might be in, et cetera. And it's just interesting that this is actually something that's so prevalent for men and women, right? Yes. That it's just a part of our like parenting universe, if you will. And I think one of the reasons is because we are so sensitive about the parenting decisions that we make and that we personally hold in our homes with our children. And we, of course, always believe that the decisions that we make are right, even though they may be right for us and not right for the person next door to us. Yes. So I'm curious, can you think of anything that maybe you and your wife did that was different or quirky, or that maybe you felt judged by, but it was right for you and it worked for your family and it was great for your kids, but it wouldn't necessarily be great for someone else? Can you think of anything? And I'm totally putting you on the spot. I recognize that. So.
No. The thing that comes to mind happens to be with our youngest child, Cole.
Okay.
Because he was a student at Roosevelt School in Santa Monica, and he actually ended up transferring to a private school because he needed more challenge. And so when he went to that school, the first year he was bringing books in to read, and one of the books was a Steve Jobs book. The big, and this is in third grade.
Right.
He had it, and so all of the teachers were like, "What's going on with this? This is so advanced." And we're like, this is who he is and who he wants to be. And then he started bringing in books like, what is the book where it's not The Omen, but it's on that, The Shining. Oh. The Shining he wanted to read.
Wait, how old was he?
Third grade, I forget.
Oh my God.
I know. So he brings the book in.
That's hilarious.
Like, okay, but then the kids wanted to read it as well and went home with their parents asking. It became a huge issue for us. Eventually, he once he left that grade, he skipped a grade and went ahead because he was just so advanced.
Right. He needed to be with kids that were at his same level and wanting to read The Shining with him. Yeah.
Exactly. So he was very advanced, and it was so new for us, and we just totally supported him though, and that was the important thing. Like, we needed him to be in his element, and so anything that we can offer him to grow and learn, we supported at the judgment of those around us, but it was right for us and right for our family. And to this day, it's, my computer is the one he chose for me because my Mac broke and I needed something less expensive, but still that would well. So.
Right, and he's the engineer in the family, so you get all your tech advice from him, right? I think that's actually one of the hardest things about parenting is when you have multiple kids in the home, to recognize that they have different personalities and different needs and different thoughts and different feelings, and that they have to be parented differently. I mean, I know that is something that, I have 2 girls and they're 3 years apart. And so there are a lot of people that in that situation, they would just, the oldest one does dance and the youngest one's going to do dance. And the oldest one likes tennis and the youngest one's going to do tennis. And this worked well as far as dealing with tantrums with the oldest one. So this is how I'm going to do it, right? The reality is, like, across the board, that has not been the case at all. And I often say that I am two different parents to two different kids. And I think that I can't even imagine, because you said you come from a family of 5 kids or 6 kids? 6 kids, right? So your parents really had their hands full and really had to toggle between different personality types. And I think that that is probably one of the hardest things about parenting, is to really like be a parent to multiple kinds of kids.
Yes, you need to put on a different parenting hat for each child. And some days that hat doesn't fit and you're just in pain because you're like, please, how can I get through this? So actually, like, I'm thankful to a certain degree for COVID, because having our children come back home and be able to make one last impression upon them before they're really free out into the world, really difference for us. You know, it was important to sort of seal the deal.
I can't tell you how many people I know, so many of my friends who have kids that were either in their first year of college or first year post-college, and they've moved back home, or they were home for some period of quarantine, and they've said exactly what you're saying, that it was like this gift of time that they had to be with their kids as an adult. And I think the other thing that's so beautiful about that is often as parents, we don't get to actually have our kids in our home as adults, and it's a totally different relationship than when they're kids, right? Like, it's not, it's totally different. And I also think that, you know, that's another really challenging, like the transition from parenting a young child to parenting a teenager to parenting a young adult. Those are very big differences in how we parent. And I think that the relationships that I see in my practice where the parent-child bonds are the strongest are the ones where the parents have understood that and have been able to grow with their kids and separate in a very developmentally productive way for them and their kids. And that's really hard to do. It's hard to say, you go out into the world, be your own wonderful, confident self, and know that I'm here and I'm going to support you and I'm always going to be your parent, but I'm not going to pick up all the pieces. Have you found that that transition was challenging for you?
Yes, in fact, for my 2 oldest children ended up moving out of the home. My daughter left for boarding school junior year in high school because she just wanted to go and have a different experience. So she went to New Hampshire.
Wow.
And that was like just so shocking for us, but it was a great school and it was a wonderful experience for her. And our son, the oldest one, he ended up his senior year, second semester, being recruited to IMG Academy in Florida for baseball.
Wow.
So he literally, like, we moved him over a weekend after deciding few days before.
Oh my God.
So that transition was for college, basically, for us. And I was this close to an empty nesting, you know, and then, you know, COVID hit and they came home.
That's wild.
Yeah. So we really prepared. Well, we didn't prepare, but we had that process happen unbeknownst, you know,
right. It was
just
pushed
like,
on you. It was like, just so you had to deal with it.
So we all grew up quickly.
Right. Yeah. Well, and sometimes I think that can actually be a good thing, right? Because if we're not, sometimes if we're not pushed into it and we just have to do it on our own, that can be in some ways harder too.
And I was the only one in my family to go away to college. I went to NYU. My other siblings all stayed home. So they never left the nest. And that's interesting on that part too.
That is really interesting. That's like a whole separate show. We could do a whole separate show on that, Chris. Wait, so I'm curious, are you close with your siblings as an adult?
Yes. I mean, the telephone or the cell phone's great. And
technology, thank God for technology, right? That's like one of the pros of technology.
Yeah, completely. But it's you know, there's nothing like being right next to them in the same town. But, you know, I love the warm weather, so the East Coast, you know, has to stay on the East side.
I totally know. I went to school in the Midwest and I had the best time, but I could not deal with the weather. It was just, as soon as I was done, I was back. I am a true and, you know, tried and true California, LA girl. I like being near the beach, and I like the, you know, our cold weather is like in the 60s, which it works for my thin blood. So I just want to welcome Tanya. Tanya started following us, and Tanya is hanging out with us. So welcome, Tanya. Nice to have you here. So what would you say are the 3 to 5 big takeaways from this book? We talked about the other one. What would you say from this book are the big takeaways?
The big takeaways are being able to the confidence in parenting for yourself as a dad, the knowledge of what to do during those emergency situations, or like doctor appointments, or not being afraid to call the doctor and be, the one
Right.
to do.
Being vulnerable, right? For like
Yeah.
a dad to be vulnerable, which is really hard for anyone, let alone dads to be vulnerable. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, again, it repeats the whole mistakes sort of experience. I think in this book, I talk about how I accidentally locked my son in the car with the keys in it, and at the grocery store, and it was one of the worst experiences ever. Eventually, we were able to get him out, and I was thankful for that. But like, that will never leave me. I'm scarred, but it grew me up. And
Do you think it scarred your son?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm better asking that.
I mean, the reason why I'm asking is because when my older daughter, who's 15 and a half, when she was, I don't even remember, I want to say she was like 3 or 4, I was at my closest friend, she's like a sister to me, her home, and they had just moved into a new home. And my daughter actually must have been like 4 or 5 now I think about it, because she went to the bathroom by herself and locked herself in the bathroom. And she's like this tiny little petite thing, so she couldn't even like reach the lock that was up, and she didn't know how to do it anyways. And my friend who didn't have the key to get into the bathroom because it was a new house, and she just didn't know where it was. The owners had left it, but she didn't know where it was. So literally my daughter was like locked on one side in the bathroom, and we were all talking to her through the door. And to this day, my best friend and I talk about this and joke about this, how my daughter was locked in a bathroom. My daughter like has a vague memory, but she thinks it's hilarious. She's like, oh yeah, remember when I was locked in the bathroom with the red wallpaper? I'm like, I do, because I almost passed out from sheer anxiety. And I was like, they're going to call me in and tell me I'm the most neglectful mom ever. Like, how could I let that happen, right? And I think that's the interesting thing as parents. Like, we think something's going to happen, and the reality is that we're going to be okay, our kids are going to be okay. And yes, it's like we may have PTSD from it, but our kids are going to be fine.
Right.
That should be the title of your next book. Our kids are going to be fine.
I love it.
Right?
I love it.
So speaking of, are you going to write another book? Like, what's on the horizon for you? You've got the podcast.
Yeah, I have a few other concepts of books in the works. Okay. It's an interesting time, as great as it is for, reading. I think it's a bit challenging for the publishing world, so I'm going to keep working on it and pitching it. But that is where I think my strength lies, that I want to be able to communicate my next book, for being also close to 50, identifying that transition you go through from parenting, job, career, and being able to handle that all, and be able to be comfortable with the person you are. And that's where I'm finding myself writing from these days.
And do you find that the transition from being the parent who is needed by the young kids and wanted by the young kids to, the role is very different now for you, right? And so do you find that transition has been really hard for you? I'm curious. I want your advice, basically, because I have 2 kids that are on the precipice of being out of the house. I mean, 15 and 12, so it's not like it's happening tomorrow, but it's going to feel like it's a blink of an eye, because as you and I know, 6 years can go by literally like in the blink of an eye. So my older one is talking about college, and she is wanting to, be more social, even though she can't right now because of COVID, but she's certainly wanting it. And there will come a time, I fear, I know, in my in my future, where my kids are not going to be around as much. So how has that transition been for you? And what would your advice be to me?
Well, the transition is tough, because when you're so involved and used to doing everything, and then it goes to nothing.
Yeah.
Is overwhelming, and you've got to find what's going to fulfill you for that emptiness that you're now experiencing.
Doing this show, I find to be very fulfilling, and I'm away from my kids. So.
There you go. I mean, you found it. You don't need anything else. But so being able to let go of that need to be available all the time.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, last night my daughter was Snapchatting me at a late hour that she was going to the gym with her girlfriends. And I'm like, what? It's too late. I'm like, text me as soon as you get home. This is not okay. And she's like, Dad, I'm old enough. I'm an adult. I don't need to do that, but okay. And I'm like, thank you. My worry will never stop. And I think that never leaves. Your concern and safety for your children never leaves. But being able to navigate that and know that they are doing their best and will be safe is challenging. So it's like being able to go into a Zen mode and figure out how to get there, so you're feeling confident as a parent.
I have this recurring thought. Well, two of them actually. One is once a parent, always a parent, right? It never goes away. And then the other one that a friend said to me many, many years ago, that as a parent, you're only ever as happy as your least happy child. And I'm sure you've heard that, right? And on the one hand, I really like that idea. And on the other hand, I'm like, no, like my happiness needs to be about me and about the things that I enjoy and not driven by my children's happiness. Like, of course, I want my children to be happy, and I will always support them and I will be there for them, but they should not be codependent. What do you think about that?
I so agree with that. And that's, I think, one of my weaker challenges, or the weakest part of me, because I could easily be codependent on my children because I love them so much and I just want them to succeed, but they would fight it because they don't need that protection to that degree from me. So it's really a lesson for me to learn how to detach, not be that Velcro, that Velcro that they're just on you. That's good when they're younger, but you've got to pull them off and let them, So.
But you know what I would say about that? I would actually say kudos to you as the parent. And I will pat myself on the back for this too, that I have two children that even already at this age are very independent and will say to me, hey, I can do this and I want to do this. And even though there are times where I want them to be like, oh, will you do it for me, or will you help me, or I want to be with you? The fact that their first instinct is actually to do things on their own and to be their own person, I feel like, wow, you know what? That's the result that I want, even though there's a part of me that wants the pull, there's a part of me that wants the attachment, there's a part of me that wants those things. But I feel really good knowing that they are strong and they do have that confidence and that they do know how to advocate for themselves. Do you feel that way about yourself? Do you feel like, hey, this is like, I've accomplished something here, my kids can do this, and thank God they can do this?
Oh yes, 100%. I mean, I'm thankful that they've been, especially since they've at such an early age have been independent and on their own, so I'm grateful for that. And I think that that's a huge takeaway for any parent, to be able to be proud of themselves for that and to really honor that in themselves, because like you said, time flies, and we want to keep them home as long as possible, but they need to fly.
Yeah, they do. So I'm curious, because I like funny stories. Were there any huge parenting blunders that you made with your kids that if you looking back on it, you're like, oh, I cannot believe now in hindsight that I did that?
Oh,
and again, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of how there's so many.
I love that. I love your honesty that there are so many.
Oh Lord. And I don't know why, Marissa. I'm stumped to think of
an actual example. That's okay. Yeah. I'm putting you on the spot. I know I am. It's okay. Well, if any come to you, like when I stuck my child, or when I let her accidentally get stuck in the locked into the bathroom, right?
Well, oh God, my kids are going to kill me, and so is my wife. One thing that I experienced.
I love stories that start out that way. Oh, I shouldn't be telling you this, but.
Right. When our oldest went to summer camp at Tumbleweed.
Okay.
He took the bus, and the first day he came home, there was something, when he came inside the home, there's something he said, and I was like, that is unacceptable. Go to your room. And he started walking upstairs, and all of a sudden, under his breath, he says the F word. And I was like, what did you just say? And my daughter, who was 2 at the time, sucking her thumb, he said, Dad, she said the word. And I was like, how is this happening? What is possible? What? And so that word has never left. And I'm like, it wasn't me, but I was afraid it was going to be my fault because my wife was around then. So that's my biggest blunder, letting him go on the bus and around all these other kids and learn those words.
Right. but they do have to learn. So there is that. And think about all the other things that they learn from their friends on the playground, right? I mean, all of the crazy stuff that they come home with and the things that they say and the behaviors. And, you know, you look at your kids and you're like, who are you? Like, this is not what I've been teaching you. And yet you can't control it.
Yeah, no, you can't. You've got to just surrender and
Yeah.
just accept. But
That's a great, I love that, you know, this idea of surrender and trying to figure out like, what can I control and really like create in routine and for my kids versus what can I not, and what are they going to learn from the world out there, and I have to help them understand it and make sense of it, right? So I'm going to go back to the podcast. You said it was 15 minutes. Is it once a week, or how frequently do you do this?
they are twice a week.
Okay.
Mondays and Wednesdays, I believe, is when they go live.
Okay.
I've been away, so it's right now we're starting, I think, tomorrow to record a bunch more. So this week we're behind, but yeah, we release 2 a week, and we invite our listeners to like send in questions, and there's a microphone on there they can talk into to ask us questions. So it's really.
Do you do a specific topic for each show? Like, do you start out with the idea of like, okay, today we're talking about transitioning out of a crib into a big kid bed?
Yes.
Or is it all over? Is it kind of all over the place?
No, it started actually as like the book was a guide for it. So we kind of followed that routine of the chapters, and then it'll progress on to the next book. And also we do sometimes some dad oriented gadgets, gifts, guide type of things too. So we'll talk about our favorite things that help us as a parent, whether it's with finances, education, you know, different tools that are out there.
Share something. What's one thing that you really have loved or has been helpful as a dad parent?
You know, the one thing, well, for finance part, it's like using apps like say Mint, which like tracks all of your expenses, all your credit cards, everything in one whole process, so that you're budgeted and you're working like exactly to the dollar.
Yeah.
And that's just one of my weaknesses.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It takes the question out of it, right? And takes the human error out of it.
Correct.
So, and also I think it actually takes the animosity between spouses out of it. If you just put everything on paper and you just say, here's the black and white of it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. We have to live within this framework. And listen, I don't like budgets. I will be very honest, but we have to abide by one. But but it's good to have it. It's very good to have it. And I do think that it takes a lot of the stress out of a relationship, because one of the things that we know is that finances play a very large role of stress in relationships. And so
it's a reason why a lot of men don't want to become fathers yet, because of not having enough money. And I was in that boat as well. And my wife was like, listen, you know, you've just got to, we got to bite the bullet, because that may never change, you know? And so
I love that you brought that up, because this is a topic that is so rarely discussed. And I think that it is a topic that is so prevalent among men, that they are so scared to take on the financial responsibility, if you will, of starting a family. And I have had this conversation so many times with my brother, with my ex-husband, other men, just talking about the stress that's related to the finances of having a family and the unfair burden on the male in the relationship. So do you think that that has changed at all? We talked a little bit about how there are more women that have gone back into the workforce, which I absolutely think is true. And do you think that or anything else has changed the story around this? Because I do think that this is something that we don't talk about enough. And I think that there are a lot of men that would actually be really incredible dads and don't do it because they are genuinely and legitimately scared to be financially responsible and the unknown of that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I relate this to the first time you get married, because that's another experience where you're like, are we financially, strong enough supporting each other to get married? And that was an issue for me as well. And you had to bite the bullet. And then through that process, you learn, whoa, wait, nothing's really changed. Now we're just two come together and we're both contributing. So when you move into the parenting, you gotta, like, I think I talk about this quite a bit in the book. It's like the first year, the money spent is really on diapers. So if you're breastfeeding, that's a lot of taken care of. And hopefully through baby showers, all of your gifts are given.
Right.
So you really have time to really make that transition down the line and save up for the toddler and plus years. So it's really, a conversation needed by all men and their partners. But it's definitely one that I try to support, saying this is something that is easily solvable by communicating.
I think it's great that it's something that you write about in your book, and hopefully, you're talking about on your blog, because I really do think that in the conversation of bringing men into the forefront of being really integral in the parenting responsibilities, this is such a huge component of that. And I think that there are not enough conversations being had around this. And I think that if we start to have more open dialogue about the finances and about the pressures of what it looks like, and I think that if I had a couple sitting here next to me, I think that the man would often sit here and say, and I'm not trying to gender stereotype, but it does often happen more with the man, that they feel this financial pressure. And I think that the woman would feel the pressure to be like the best mom and to be imparting the knowledge and the wisdom and, doing all of the things that she's supposed to do, as opposed to the two of them sharing those roles, and not just sharing the roles, but dialoguing back and forth and communicating their fears and their frustrations and their anxieties, and really becoming a team in raising this family. So, it's my hope, one of the reasons why I'm doing this show, which if you're just joining us, thank you it's The Art of Parenting on Sway TV on Amazon Live. We're having such a great conversation right now with Chris Pegula. So thank you so much for being here with me, Chris. But yeah, I really think that is such a part of this conversation. And it's my hope that more and more people are having this conversation. Because like I said, I think that there are quite a few men out there that would be really amazing dads, and they're genuinely scared to have kids. They
Yes.
really are.
It's almost like you need to have them assume the roles like Freaky Friday, like they switch
Totally.
positions and live in that day mentally,
Yeah.
so that they could just see what the other is experiencing and get a different lens, and you will have a whole different approach.
It's so funny that you say that, because it just jogged a memory to early on when my oldest was probably just a few weeks old, or maybe a month or two old. And I'll never forget, it was the first time, I was breastfeeding, so in the early stages I wasn't able to really leave for more than like a 2 to 3 hour window. But I remember.
I can't hear you. I lost you. I can't hear. No, I can't hear anything. I've lost you. Sorry. I lost you. I'm so sorry, but
we figured out our tech problems. And thank you to my producer for helping me to figure those out, because that is not my area of expertise. But we're back. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for sticking around. Okay, so here's the question. Here's the big question. And we're winding down because you've been hanging out with me for over an hour now, and I so appreciate it. If you could change one thing about the way that you parented, and I know that that's a really like a big thing because you've got over 20 years experience now. So if you could change one thing, what would that be? What would you do differently?
I would take the advice of thinking before I react, because that was one thing that I think I was most challenged on. It was being like immediate in terms of my reactions to try to quell different problems or prevent accidents and stuff, and it only led to more disruption at time, and my energy would be transferred to them of the anxiousness and whatnot. And so it's really important as a parent to just be able to, again, as you started this episode with the zenness, and that's the one thing that, you know, I'm finally finding strength in, and meditation has helped tremendously with that. So that would be my answer.
I love that. I am a huge believer in meditation. And since you brought it up, I will just share, this is something that if you have young kids, this book, which is called Sitting Still Like a Frog, this introduces the basics of mindfulness to children. And it's a really easy to understand book about mindfulness. It helps guide them in understanding presence of mind, presence of heart, presence of body. It comes with exercises to do, and there's a CD in the back that kids can actually like play and can listen to. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, what you're saying, I think that the practice of mindfulness is so important as far as our our self-regulation. I think it's good for us as parents and as adult human beings to be able to have it, and to also teach our children starting from a really young age. And so often our children, you know, they're in like their late childhood, early teen years, and they don't know how to self-soothe. It's amazing. Right. I mean, I work with so many teenagers who genuinely don't have a tool set around how to self-soothe other than using things that are crutches or things that are not healthy. And so as parents, one of the things that I talk about, that I practice a lot with my kids, and then I talk a lot in my practice, is no matter how old your kids are, but hopefully if you have the ability to start at a very young age, is to be talking to them about mindfulness and breathing, and even doing things like meditations and visualizations with them from a really young age. Did you do any of that with your kids when they were younger?
Yes, and it's very funny because this reminds me of a story, again, that is quite humorous.
Yes, please share. I like the humor stories.
So the experience my wife has as a therapist, and also from the school that she went to, was very strong with the Native American Council, and where you sit around in a circle and there's a talking stick, you light a candle, you give intention. So we wanted to introduce our children to that, and at the time we only had our two children, Kai and Juliet, and they were probably like 5 and 3 at the time. We had a teepee that was like, you know, fun. We put it up in our bedroom.
I love it. Yeah.
The teepee, we lit the candle, we had a little talking stick. And so we started the process. And once we gave the talking stick to our son, and he had the floor, he just started going off on his sister. And every way possible, that was so wrong. And then I had to take the stick away, say, wait, this is how we do this. And then he got upset, she got upset, and it all fell apart.
But you tried. The intention was there.
Yes, we started with that intention, and now this is the intention.
Okay, but that happens, right? We can have good intention for things, and then it can fall apart. I mean, you know, even today, earlier, and I don't know if my daughters are watching, and hopefully they won't be upset with me for sharing this story, but literally before I came here today, we were sitting in the kitchen, the three of us were talking, and my younger daughter was sharing a story, and my older daughter had been in a similar situation, so she was trying to give her younger sister feedback about it, and my younger daughter just didn't want to hear it and got frustrated and just said, I don't want to talk to you, and walked away. Thankfully, you know, we brought her back, and we were able to work through the situation. But I think that so much is teaching our kids how to handle their emotions, how to be present, how to work through things with other people. And it's a really hard thing to do because I was talking to a mom that I work with last night and who has multiple kids, and she was saying, for me, what is so challenging is as soon as my kids start to escalate, I get triggered. And so it's really hard for me then to bring them down and to model the kind of conversation and the kind of dialogue that I would like to be having in the house. Did you find that to be challenging when you were bringing up your 3 kids?
Yes, and it really goes back to like the what I just said of like not reacting, because the energy, just by nature, I'm high strung. I'm a high energy. I'm just literally, I'm constantly nonstop.
You don't seem that way. I have to be honest. You seem very chill. So you're doing something. You're doing something that's like very different.
I guess it's more in the my goofiness and personality that I'm just kind of like a wind-up toy.
Okay.
So that's
oh my God, I love that analogy. I'm so gonna use that. I'm gonna be like, with my kid, I'm like, you're like a wind-up toy right now.
well, I think a lot of dads are accused of being the wind-up toy.
For sure.
Be calm, and the dads will come home and let's play, and
sure. Yeah.
There's no downtime. So having that guidance to be able to know in yourself that you need to like be calm, cool, and non-reactive is the hardest, challenging thing of a parent to be able to do. But it's, I think, the most necessary in order to achieve, peace and being able to communicate properly.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I talk a lot to parents about, specifically to try and circumvent what you're talking about, is to actually try to talk to our kids about things proactively and to set up expectations that we are hoping that we can hold them accountable to and also ourselves accountable to in advance of anything happening. Because then if you do, then you don't even have to get reactive as a parent. Right? And that's a really hard thing too, because I think that requires a lot of forethought, and that requires the ability for parents to really look at what's ahead of them and think like, what are all the different scenarios that could happen, and let me talk to my kids about what my expectations are for them. And that's challenging. I mean, I think that like that's the hard work of parenting. So,
Michelle, 100%.
Right? Yeah. So you said that that's the one thing that you would change. If you could tell a parent, like, what is your best parenting tip, the one thing you want a dad to know, not just a new dad, but just in general, if you're talking to dads, like if you had like a 2-minute TED Talk for dads, right? Like what's the messaging that you are going to give them?
I think the messaging would be how to continue and keep open the lines of communication regardless of the reaction of your child, and being able to be the buffer to accept and to allow whatever they're going through to be like that glass, to fill, to be the person to allow the glass to get full, and then not to let it tumble over on them, but then to take that process and then be able to come back with more knowledge to replenish them. And it's something that I think we are all capable of doing 100%. And it just takes discipline and commitment.
It's hard to do that. I mean, I think that that's a lovely thought, but I think it's hard to do that. Related to that, what do you personally do for yourself for self-care to keep your internal, battery going, so to speak, right? So that you can show up and be the best parent possible. Because one of the things that I talk a lot about on this show, and I just want to say, hi, Caitlin. It's so nice to have you back. I love when Caitlin joins me a lot on this show and hangs out with me. So it's good to have you, Caitlin. I talk a lot about self-care on this show. And as a mom, about, and a parent, when we have children, especially younger children in the home, one child can place anywhere from 50 to 100 demands on you in a day. So if all of a sudden you've got multiple kids, you're constantly hearing, mom, dad, I need, I want, can you do this, blah, blah, right? It's constant. And in order to, especially now with COVID, when we're all on top of each other all the time, what are the things that we're doing for our own mental and emotional well-being so that our internal bank stays filled up or at least gets replenished throughout the day, so that by the time we hit 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., we're not depleted and we can still be a parent that shows up. Because as you know, parenting is a 24/7 job. And even, you know, sometimes I think like the hardest hours are between 4 and 7, when our kids really need us to be on and present with them the most, like dinner time, bath time, book time, helping them self-soothe and calm down and get to bed. And the only way,
witching hour.
the what?
AKA the witching hour.
Oh, totally. Or like, I like to say the witching hours, you know, it's like basically like the end of the day. So I'm curious, like, what have you done as a dad that you think is maybe different, or maybe not different, but what have you done personally that has helped you to fill up and, you know, refuel, if you will, your internal bank so that you have the energy to be a dad 24/7?
I became a marathon runner, and I've run marathons.
That'll do it.
Yeah, that itself has taught me so much. The discipline involved. I actually loved the process of training more than the actual marathon day, because the months going into it, the preparation and discipline, I would, after my runs, come home and be like, okay, anything you can hit me with anything, and it's just gonna land, and that's it. I'm not gonna react because I don't have the energy.
It's so interesting that you may have been physically exhausted. Like, you have to explain this to me. You might have been physically exhausted from running and training, but you were able to emotionally show up and be present for your kids. Why and how? Because you would give them back to yourself, so you were then ready to be with them?
Well, yes, I think that so much of the running involved my mental sort of vomit, if you will, you know, like just basically going through everything that would be anxiety provoking and whatnot. And after running for 3 hours and coming home, I would get refilled by just looking at their faces, because the joy is there. And that was the battery charge I needed to refill myself and recharge. Because they would just welcome me with loving arms, you know, and would want to come on the runs with me at times, which was not possible. So, you know, that really was I think my saving grace.
It really is something that recharges you when you walk in the door and you see these little faces come up to you and just love you and just want to hug you and just have fun with you, right? It's like the best part, and it's definitely one of the things that I miss about having little kids. Like, there's, you know, little kids are so different than older kids, and there are pros and cons to both, of course, but that is very different. I don't walk in the door anymore to, you know, kids who are, "Mommy, I'm so excited to see you. I want you to play with," you know, it's not that at all. It's what's for dinner, and I'm going to go do my homework, right? But that's why I have dogs, because dogs give me the unconditional love that I want, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Well, once we become grandparents, then it'll start all over again.
Yes. Except I don't want my kids to become grandparents too soon, to become parents too soon, because I want them to go and travel and do some things that I didn't get to do, but, you know, I hope that they will do that. But yes, I say that to my kids all the time, that I'm so excited for them to one day have kids and I can be a grandma and be involved in their life in a really fun way. And then when the baby needs to be changed or like sleep trained, I can be like, and here you go, have fun. Right? That's like the best part about being a grandparent, I think. You get to, like, it's all the yummy stuff, right? And then you get to just give them back. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This has been just a pure pleasure to have you with me. I hope that you have also enjoyed being here. And it's been great. I hope that for anyone who's following along, I hope that you will check out Chris's books. This is one of them, Diaper Dude, The Ultimate Dad's Guide to Surviving the First 2 Years. Both books are available in the carousel. You can shop the carousel. You can see all of the items. I didn't get to a ton of items today because we were having this really fun, fascinating conversation about dads, but that's okay because I really enjoyed my time with you. So thank you so much. This has been great. I've really enjoyed it. Any last tidbits of wisdom or tricks or anything that you didn't share that you maybe came into the show and said, oh, I want to say that? Anything that maybe...
Say goodnight to your wife and kids and give them a big hug and kiss.
I love it. I love that. And on that, I'm going to say thank you. Have a good evening. Stay safe, be healthy, and enjoy being a dad. Take care.
All right.
Bye, Chris. Take care. Okay, that was so fun. I love having authors on here. I've talked a lot about how much I love to read, and I get so much joy out of speaking with authors and talking to people, especially when there's a book that I really have loved. And so this is obviously not a kid's book. This is a book for dads, and I think that it's great to have people on here who can really talk to the gear and the things that dads and moms need. So I'm gonna share, before we head out, I wanna share two of my favorite kid books because, and this actually, they are some of my favorites, but also they were favorites of my kids, my girls, their dad, that he read to them. And if you don't have these two books in your children's book library, these are books that we strongly encourage you to get and to have. This first one is The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. Love this book. Every child should have it. But one of the things that we talked about that is so interesting is that this is not just a book for kids, that every time you read this, even as an adult, you can really get something out of the book. And so that's one of the books that we really love. And then the other one that we love is this collection. It's 3 stories by Dr. Seuss in this book called Yertle the Turtle and Other Stories. Again, highly encourage you to have this book in your children's library. It is absolutely one of my favorites. In a couple of weeks, I'm putting together a show. I'm so excited about this. I'm putting together a show where we are going to build your children's library. We're gonna break it down by age, and we're gonna talk about what are like the top 5 to 7 books that you've gotta have for every single age. And I've got authors coming on, I've got books that I'm gonna show you, and I'm so excited about this. So stay tuned for that. And then I also wanna tell you, I'm very excited that I will be back this Friday morning, and I am bringing Jed back with me by popular demand. We actually had such a fun time doing the show together, which I think is just ironic and funny, and people said that it was great and they loved seeing us both interact and have fun with each other and give each other a hard time. Hopefully our girls are going to be okay with more of it, because I'm thinking that I might be able to get him to come on even more frequently, but he's definitely coming back this Friday. And I am working, I don't want to say too much because I'm super excited, but we are working on, here's the bottom line is I haven't even shared this with him yet, so he may not be into this, but it's my show, so I get to do what I want. I am working on a very special Valentine's Day show where we can talk about, in the week leading up to Valentine's Day, things that we can do to celebrate the love that we have for our children, the love that we have for family. And of course, because this is on Sway TV on Amazon Live, some of my favorite products and gift items that you can get for the people that you love in your life. So stay tuned for that. Caitlin, come back and hang out with me on Friday morning. It's gonna be a really fun show, and I'm super excited for that. So thank you again. And Chris, if you're watching, thank you so much for being here with me today, and I will look forward to seeing everyone on Friday morning with Jed. We'll see you then. In the meantime, let's sway. Have a good day.
Make sure you guys follow Sway TV. Follow Sway right here. Ooh, it's this way, sorry. Corey says, thank you, Sway TV. Shakira says, thank you, Sway. Yes, guys, it is so much fun. We love Sway TV.
So grateful for you guys and for Sway TV.
We'll see you soon. Until then, let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway. Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.